Welcome to episode 50 of How About Them Huskies, the Big 5-0. I'm Connor. I'm joined by Andrew. And a couple nights ago, UConn picked up a huge win against North Carolina, a top 10 win at the Garden, 87-76. There's a lot to talk about from this game, a lot of different directions we could go. But Andrew, what's your initial reaction after that big win?
Well, it's exactly what we needed. Obviously we didn't play somebody like Arizona, who's now the number one team in the country. But UNC, I believe, what were they, 10? I believe
Nine. They were.
9. So they were in the top 10, so it was a top 10 matchup. But it's exactly what we needed, back at our second home, well, third home technically, but back at Stores South in front of our real fans. Not saying that the fans weren't represented well in Kansas because they were, but just beating a really good team in front of our crowd is just exactly what we need. I mean, we beat them very nicely. We didn't edge anything out. It was just all around great team win. I think everybody played fantastic.
Yeah, everyone across the board, I agree, played well, but especially a guy, Cam Spencer, who previous game against Kansas had like two bad feet. I didn't even know if
Yeah.
he'd suit up for this one. He had 23 points. He was huge down the stretch, even in the first half, mostly, not as much down the stretch, I should say. That was another guy we'll get to. But 16 points in the first half. He went 3 for 9 from three, which he missed a few, but if he scores 23 points, I'm fine with that. And he also got a little feisty. There's some action
Oh yeah.
late in the first half, early in the second half. Him and Baycott were going at it. And if I'm Spencer, I wouldn't really go at a guy that's 6'10, 6'11 center, fifth year guy. But he did, and it got chippy. Baycott had a huge putback dunk over Sampson off a missed free throw and kind of showboated. He got a tech late in the first half. And then Cam hit a three in Baycott's face and had some words coming down. He got a tech, which he does not seem like the type of guy I would think to get a technical foul, especially in an environment like that. But he did, but he played his heart out. He had 7 rebounds, 6 assists, overall a massive game from Cam, even despite the technical, which he said it's his first one of his college career, which I can certainly believe.
Well, I saw that Hurley said he gets a bunch of them in practice, which I don't know if I quite believe that, but I think the heat of the moment just kind of got to him. A lot of people in the heat of the moment gets them and they do things that they don't necessarily mean to do. But yeah, I would have to say Spencer is one of the last guys, besides I'll say Andrew Hurley on this team to get a tech. He is the last guy I would have ever thought to get a tech just because of the way he plays, the way he is. But I thought it was really cool to see him fired up like that because he also, as much as we needed this bounce back game, he really needed it. And I'm happy he suited up because I don't think he was quite hurt. I think it was the shoes, honestly. I
Yeah,
That's what I believe at this point.
yeah, he did joke that he's not blaming the shoes, but it could easily have been that. Turf toe, I believe, is what I saw the official diagnosis was from someone. But yeah, he played his heart out at the Garden. I mean, what more can you expect? He every game except for that Kansas game where he really struggled. He's been one of our best players on the floor, which I don't know if I expected that headed into the season. But I mentioned he went off in the first half. He had 16 points. The second half was all about a guy, Alex Caravan. He finished with 18, 9, and 5, which I assume that's one of his first 5 assist games. He's not a guy you expect to have that many in that department, but he struggled shooting. We'll talk about that. But down the stretch, he was making plays down low. He had a big dunk. Klingon found him. He really stepped it up at halftime. I was thinking, he shouldn't even be out there if he's not making his threes. Why is obviously we're not very deep in his position, but at halftime I was like, we gotta fix this guy, and he got fixed even if he shot 2 for 9 from three.
Well, there are a couple of things in this game where I feel like the moment in the crowd got to them a little bit in a negative way. The threes just jacking them up was just pointless. I mean, that's what was kind of frustrating me was when people would just jack up a three for no reason. I mean, work, you're not down by any. Like, you don't need those 3 points. Like, work for a good shot. But the other thing was, oh my God, we were acting like we were the 2014 LA Clippers, lobbing everything. Guys, just finish the layup for heaven's sake. We probably could have scored 95 points if we didn't lob everything. So it's just little things like that. They didn't lose us the game, but still, it was just interesting to see all the lobs. Like I was literally watching the game, texting my dad, and he literally told us, me and my brother, that this lob shit needs to stop because it did. I mean, they wasted so many opportunities for wide open layups to try to make a cool play. And I mean, it didn't hurt us in any way, but I did think it was kind of funny at the same time.
Yeah, it felt like when they started that press in the second half, they were almost daring us, hey, break this and take the 2-on-1. And we got it like 3 or 4 times. And I don't think we converted a 2-on-1 once. Just silly plays, even some lobs that weren't bad. But like, I remember one to Klingon, he was too deep down. He like couldn't catch
Yeah,
it and land it. And obviously some lobs just out of bounds. It was a little sloppy. I mean, I don't want to say credit their press because every single time we got Pyatt, but I mean, it's just a great win overall. The Tar Heel fans actually really represented at the Garden. I'm not too surprised. They have a great fan base. They were probably honestly, I don't there's no way to tell. There's probably 60% Tar Heels fans supporting UConn, even though
wow.
Huskies store south. Yeah, Carolina travels well, especially in the New York area. But yeah, we talked about Cam, we talked about Caravan, another guy who really, and as of the day of recording, the birthday boy, Solo Ball,
Mhm.
he really impressed in that second half. He had three threes in the second half alone. He had 13 points. He had a couple of drives into the paint where he kind of just like went into the middle and just pulled up and hit the shot. I was like, is that a thing now? Can he do more than just stand and shoot? I mean, if he can drive, that's huge for this team. I mean, obviously we'll get to Castle after, but Castle came back, so he probably won't be a starter much longer solo, but he's really impressed. I feel like these past 7 or 8 games he started, and he certainly really impressed last night.
He said, you know what, screw it. This is going to be one of my last starts. I'm just going to decide to go off tonight. And he showed that he is so much more than just a shooter. I mean, he's only 6'3", but he's so aggressive and so built that he can just take it to the lane. He's honestly, in my opinion, a shorter version of Castle. Like Luke Murray, Kamani Young said that Castle's the strongest player on this team in every aspect. I think Solo Ball's up there too. But when I would watch him play last year, the high school offense that he was in was nothing like the UConn offense right now. And I actually think he's going to be our starting point guard next year because I just really like when he brings up the ball. I really like what he does off the dribble. So it's just great to see him have a night like that. But now that Castle's back, knowing that you have a guy who can replace Newton Castle off the bench whenever you need him to is really, really great to know. But I'm really happy for Solo that he finally got his game because he deserves it. The kid works hard, talented player, really great guy. So I'm happy he finally had his night.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned Newton's gone. Castle, we assume, is a one and done. Diarra, I believe he has an option for a COVID year. We don't know if he'll take it. We're not going to assume. Well, we assume he doesn't. I feel like that's the way you have to look at it. And we're bringing in a guy, Ahmad Noel, as a freshman point guard. But besides that, there's not a lot of depth in the backcourt. I mean, Jaden Ross isn't really a guard. Isaiah Abraham coming in, he's not really a guard. They're like both wings. There's going to be a lot of minutes to be had for ball
Yeah.
handlers. I assume we'll bring in a transfer or two because there's a need there. But yeah, Solo definitely has impressed. And we mentioned Castle. He only played 10 minutes. He looked solid out there. We obviously knew he was going to have the minutes restriction. He had a nice bucket, a nice little catch it in the mid range, fake drive to the hoop. I feel like that's going to be one of his signature moves. We saw it the first 2 games, and obviously he did it here. I don't know how long this seasoning into play, whatever term you want to use, is going to take. Obviously, our next game, Arkansas Pine Bluff. I don't know if he'll play 20
Huge one.
minutes in that game. Yeah, definitely. We'll get to that at the end. Don't worry. But maybe he'll play 20 minutes, and then by Gonzaga in 8 days, he'll be up to full strength. But I just feel like getting him back with the group we already have and seeing how close we were against Kansas without him and without Cam pretty much, it's just the ceiling for this team is maybe even higher than last year's. I feel like that's certainly a stretch to say because they won the title, but just everyone knows their role. You could argue Cam is just as important, if not more, than Jordan Hawkins. That's another hot take, but I feel like Cam almost, they do the same thing. They're great shooters, spot up guys, but Cam almost does more than shoot, which that's no disrespect to Hawk at all, but I feel like Cam was really not undervalued when I feel like we all said he's not Hawkins, he's not Joey, he's right in the middle. He's certainly a lot more closer to Hawkins now that we've seen him for 9 games. But I feel like this team certainly has the tools to repeat, especially it's looking like another year where there's only 5 or 6 teams that have the capability to win it all.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm still gonna stay with my take that this year I like our bench better than last year. I mean, I don't think we need a rotation of 10 or 11 guys to win a national championship. I think we have the perfect number right here with our starting five and then eight, maybe nine guys off the bench. But because in that Kansas game, I think literally the only two people that came off the bench were Samson and DR, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, we almost won that game. So it just proves that you really only need 7 or 8 guys to win a championship. But yeah, with Cam, it's a weird like comparison for him because he's obviously Hawk is better because he was a lottery pick and he's averaging over 13 points. But he's also not Joey who just spot up shooter. So it's a really weird comparison. It's like you can't make a comparison for him. But I'm still just thanking Hurley for getting him every day because this team is not as good without him. But I do agree that we have the tools to win a national championship again. Honestly, we do.
Yeah, we mentioned Cam. The Carolina fans were not the biggest
Oh, they
fans of
hate
Cam
him.
Spencer. I saw on social media there's this like they're comparing him to Grayson Allen of Duke. If you don't know Grayson Allen, he's one of the more dirtier players in the history of college
That's the most
basketball.
ridiculous take I've ever seen, by the
It is
way.
it is ridiculous, but if you put yourself in the shoes of a North Carolina fan who has never seen this white shooter, I don't want to I hate using that term, but that's pretty much what he is. You always
Yeah,
equate guys like that with Duke, and you see, oh, this is the first time we're seeing him. He's good, and he's talking trash to our best player, showing him up. We're gonna hate this guy. So I don't blame them, but I mean, if they watch a second game of Cam Spencer, they're going to think he's the quiet guy who just casually gets 18 points and 5 or 6 assists. I mean, I feel like that's a one night show by him, and I love it. I remember we all saw the GIF. I posted it on my Instagram of him going nuts. I was at the Garden watching. I saw him do that, and I was just praying the cameras caught it and they didn't go to commercial by then. But obviously they did. But that's something that really surprised me. He was absolutely hyped up.
yeah. All throughout that game, one of my best friends who I know is watching this, shout out to you, Brennan, even though you guys lost, but he was texting me like, who is this Spencer guy and why is he acting all tough? He doesn't look tough. He doesn't seem tough. Like, just like the way you look at him, you would absolutely think that he's just that guy that shoots. You look at a guy like Klingon, really big guy, he looks intimidating. You know, even you look at a guy like Solo Castle, they look intimidating. But a guy like even Caravan is starting to look like that. But a guy like Spencer, you just know that he's going to be the shooter. He's like I said earlier, he's the last guy I would ever expect to do that.
You say he doesn't look intimidating. Obviously, he switched the shoes. He went the white socks with the black shoes. I saw these tweets out there. It's like
Feeling
Cam
dangerous.
Spencer's. He's dressed like he was on his way to the men's league at the YMCA and got lost and is now playing at MSG. But I mean, if he puts up 23 points, he can wear clown shoes for all I care. But a couple more points from this Carolina game. We haven't really mentioned the name Tristan Newton, who had one of his worst games of the year with 14, 5, and 5, which is, if he did that last year, he'd be throwing a parade. So he's still one of the best players in the conference. I feel like the Big East, arguably one of the best players in college basketball. So him having 14 and us comfortably winning, I'm fine with that. Who else have we haven't really touched about on Klingon. He kind of didn't have his best effort again against one of the better centers in Baycott. He kind of struggled with Dickinson as well. I feel like he's still not 100%. Obviously, he's
Me
not.
too.
He was questionable going into the game with a toe injury. I don't think it's crazy to give him a week off and say we don't need you against Arkansas Pine Bluff. I mean, I don't
Exactly
think
what I
that'll
was
have.
thinking.
I don't think it'll happen because that's just not how Hurley rolls. But I wouldn't be opposed to him just sitting or just playing a couple of minutes. There's no reason. What if he aggravates whatever injury he has trying to guard a 6'6" center that plays for the Pine Bluff? I mean, it's just it makes sense to rest him. It's also a tough spot where you're making him play 3 straight games against top 10 teams if you do that. Which it's like I said, a tough spot. He won't end up sitting. If he does, I'd be surprised. If he does, it's because he's more injured than he is now. I don't think they'll play him through that game just to sit him against the bad opponent. But yeah, he hasn't looked great against these top competitions. Obviously, he's been great defensively. Don't get me wrong. I feel like a lot of people overlook how good of a defender he is. He had that one block early in the game on Baycott. I feel like people just look at the box score and see he had 8 points. Why is this guy going to be a top 15 pick in the NBA draft if he has 8 points and 4 rebounds as a center? But he does a lot more than what the box score shows, and he's going to be huge for us, especially when he gets 100%, which I hope is soon. And I think it will be soon.
And this is something I really have been wanting to touch on because I've seen way too. I'm going to try to not talk about this for too long, but I do want to make a couple of points because I've seen too many like things about how he's not the real deal because he dominates these non-con 6'6", 6'8" centers, but he can't go against the real guys. Now, let me remind you, I'll use last night as an example. Joel Embiid, one of the most dominant centers in the league, went for 50 points last night against two, the Washington Wizards. I couldn't even name you their center. I mean, when he goes against a team like Boston with Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford, completely different. So no, Clingan does not suck. Yes, he's ready for the NBA, but Dickinson and Baycott are good too. But if you notice, people don't get a lot of points in those games. Dickinson's not going to get 30 against Clingan, and Clingan's not going to get 30 against him. It's just with him, it's just holding his own, which he has done both times. Baycott didn't score 40 points on him, neither did Dickinson. I mean, half of Dickinson's points were 3-pointers, which isn't Clayton's fault. So I've just, there's a narrative being pushed with him that I really don't like at all. He's 100% ready for the NBA. He's a very, very talented player. And I have to agree with the resting him for Arkansas Pine Bluff. I mean, we don't need him. We're going to win by like 60. Let Sampson get the run and then let Yusuf come off the bench to see what he can do because I am still curious what he can do because there's a world where he might end up getting a lot of minutes next year if Klingon does leave. So I think he should rest him no matter what. I agree with you though. Hurley's not the type of guy to do that. He'll say, suck it up, get in there, and drop 40 points against a team that has zero notable players. So I don't think he will, but I think he should rest him. But that's coach's decision, not ours.
Yeah, you say 40 points. He's not going to score 40, but I agree if he's in there, if he's only going to play 15 minutes, give him 15 touches. Like obviously we saw that in the opener against NAU. Every time he was in there, he had the ball. Do that, kind of treat that like this game. See, okay, he's in there, we're going to give him the ball and we're not going to have him just be running up and down on his toe for no reason. But you also mentioned Yusuf. He got into the game in the first half. I'm not really, it's an unfortunate situation that both Sampson and Donovan had 2 fouls and you didn't want one of them to pick up a silly third in the last possession. But he got in there. He got to take his warm up shirt off. He'll be a factor at some point. Obviously, kind of like Sampson his freshman year. There's not room right now. He's not going to play over either of our two bigs, and he can't really play next to either of our two bigs. So I hope he sticks it out. Maybe he sees Sampson as a junior playing significant minutes for the first time. Maybe he sees that and says, oh, maybe if I wait a year or two, this will be me. But I think we're just about ready to move on. We could talk about Carolina for a brief second. I mean, you mentioned Baycott. He had 13 and 13, 5 assists as well, but he was really shut down in the second half. He had most of those points, I believe, all but 2 in the first half. So we did a good job on him down the stretch. RJ Davis is a guy we said to
Oh,
watch for. He kept them in it. He had 26 points. He had that one sequence where he hit the three and then they really put on the press and we didn't have a great group to break it at the time. He just stole and laid it in. That was a 5 point play. It cut it from 10 to 5. Hurley calls a timeout and Carolina fans go nuts, which that is really the only point I felt like no way they slip up here and lose this game. I had the mindset if they ever lost the lead, even if it was with like 8 minutes left, I didn't think they were gonna win. But they held the lead for 34 minutes out of the 40. So that obviously didn't happen. But yeah, RJ Davis had a great game. Harrison Ingram's a guy who played pretty much the whole time. He torched us as well. He had some tempers flare with Cam. They wasn't really as like they didn't stop play for it, but he was up in his face a little bit too. He had 20 points. He had a 3 at the buzzer at the first half. But besides that, not much going on for the Tar Heels. I mean, Cormac Ryan's a guy who's their best shooter. He went 0 for 6 from 3. That's kind of like us having Cam go 0 for 6 from 3. So obviously we kind of caught them on a bad night. Not saying if they were better, they would have beat us, but overall, a very, very solid win. You got any last thoughts before we move on to this thriller on Saturday?
Yeah, a couple. I mean, RJ Davis, if you want to come to UConn, feel free. I mean, he is insane. Like I was just watching him. I would love to have him on our team. But other than that, I mean, it kind of looked like honestly, UNC looked like us against Kansas, if I'm being completely honest. I mean,
Mhm.
their best shooter had a tough night, also happened to us. Their center had a tough night, same deal with Klingon. Their guard had a fantastic game with Davis in 26, same thing with Newton. So, I mean, you can see the similarities, right?
Yeah, definitely. I also feel like we're kind of I'm talking more about Carolina here because I feel like there's no hate really from UConn fans to Carolina like
No.
there is Duke, Kentucky, maybe even now Kansas after that game. But RJ Davis is a guy, obviously we all know him. Caleb Love was there for a few years. They had awful chemistry. They took shots from each other. There was no real ball distribution. And Love obviously transferred to Arizona, who's number one now, but this is letting him, RJ Davis, really they gave him the keys and he's balling out. He's probably gonna be an All-American. And I'm pretty sure he's a senior. So maybe he can use his COVID year at UConn. I mean, imagine
Yeah.
that, but I don't think he'll be a Husky, but definitely a type of guy you want, a guy that you give him the ball, you know he's getting the bucket. All right, now we can move on. Talk a little bit about the game on Saturday, the final real cupcake game, not counting the two against DePaul. Um, yeah, I had to get that in there. They're 1-7.
Yeah, that's
It,
absurd.
it
I
used to
mean,
be
he's gonna get
Georgetown,
fired.
but
My
yeah,
God.
no matter how awful your roster is, you can't be 1-7 before conference play. They're
Yeah.
like I said, it used to be Georgetown. They're still not amazing either, but they'll put up fights. They put up fights
I
against
feel
us both
terrible
games
for them.
last year.
They got
Yeah, it's
robbed.
yeah, that game against TCU you're
Oh,
talking about.
yeah.
Yeah, when Emmanuel Miller clearly stepped out of bounds and hit a crazy game-winning
Pure
three.
robbery.
Yeah, but it's how it is sometimes. I say that they should definitely be able to review that and turn it and overturn it, but sometimes that is what it is. But let's focus on Arkansas Pine Bluff, the last real cupcake. They played Gonzaga, who obviously we're playing. They played Gonzaga in their last game. They scored 71, but they allowed 111, so they lost by 40. But
Jeez.
I don't know much about them. I honestly don't care to learn much about them. Sometimes I do for these non-conference games. Like, sure, I'll look up the best guys on Manhattan. That might be interesting, but we're gonna win this game. I feel like it's a matter of how we win and who stars, and there's more questions in that regards than how the game will play out. Like how much will Castle play? How much will Klingon play? How much will other guys play? But what do you think? That's I was going to ask you the keys to winning. Obviously, that's a dumb question to ask. We'll just jump to players to watch. I honestly think it is something. I got nothing. Who's your player to watch for this one?
I mean, this kind of reminds me of a Grambling State type of game, like just a school that you've never heard of and you have no idea anything about them, but we should kill them. But my player of the game for this one, oh boy. Hmm. I'm gonna go with Solo again. I think he gets his final start here. I think Castle is gonna be all healed up by the time the Gonzaga game rolls around. And I think Solo's going to have one more fantastic. Not saying he's not going to have any more good games, but I think he's going to have one more really good afternoon because it is a 12 p.m. game. But I think he's going to have one last great afternoon for a start. Knock on wood here that nobody else gets hurt. But I think Solo's gonna have his one last start against Arkansas Pine Bluff, and he's going to take care of business.
Yeah, I just pulled up their ESPN page because I feel like I'm doing you guys a disservice if I don't have any information. That's not the point of this pod. They scored 86 points against Oklahoma, who's ranked in the top
Wow.
20. So they've still lost 107 to 86. Looks like they play zero defense, but
Yeah.
they can certainly score it. I mean, they got we'll do this live here. I'll look at their top scorers.
Who's their tallest guy? I wonder. Hold on.
Well, they got two guys. They got three guys averaging 16 and a half points per game or more. Kylan Milton's averaging over 20. Rashad Williams averaging 18. Joe French averaging 16 and a half. Those are all guards. Let's see their top big guy. Whoa. I clicked on a guy who was listed as a forward and he's 6'4".
Ah, ah.
Let me see who their starting lineup versus Gonzaga, who their center was, or who their
Is
tallest
this
player
high
was.
school basketball? Good Lord.
Oh, they have a 6'8" dude. They're all right.
There we
I
go.
was worried they were starting a 6'4"
Good
guy, but it
Lord.
looks like the 6'4" guy's like the only other listed forward who played versus Gonzaga. I'm not checking the heights of all the guards. Maybe there's a guard who's 6'5" or 6'6" in there, but they're another really small team. And I forgot we're doing players to watch. I was a little distracted. I'm going Alex Caravan just because I want to see how he builds off that second half he had. Obviously, the threes were not falling for him. He took a career high. I looked this up because I was like, there's no way he's taken 17 shots in a game before. A career high in field goal attempts, both regular shots and threes. He had never taken 9 threes in a game. I think he's going to have a big one. Even he's another guy who's a little banged up, I feel like. Still, his hand's been taped for a while. Kind of corresponds with when he's been struggling shooting. So I don't think he's 100% there, but he's a guy. I feel like he's gonna have a bounce back and maybe knock down 3 or 4 threes. He's been huge for us this year, scoring. It's obviously we know he can score. He averaged almost. I don't remember if it was doubles last year. It's close to it, if not. But yeah, I think he's gonna certainly bounce back against Arkansas Pine Bluff, the Golden Lions of Arkansas Pine Bluff.
I was just looking at their website. They've got a whole countdown and game guide for this game, like a day and
Ooh,
8 hours or something like that till the game, and they're like ready. They've got the whole where it is, location, time, channel,
they're
everything.
they're on top of
So,
it.
yeah, I
Also,
mean,
they made 15 threes out of their 19 shots made.
Jesus.
So it's another reason Donovan, they're not going to drive into Donovan. So what's the point of having him out there? But
Exactly.
it's going to be a great game. If the Huskies lose this game, you can blame this podcast. This would
Yep.
be the worst loss, I think, in program history if they were to drop it. The line's not going to be out yet. They're probably be what was Gonzaga? Let's see if I can see what they were favored by. I'm just another live little. It was
I'm gonna go with
Gonzaga favored
30.
by 33 and a half.
Yeah.
I feel like we'll be closer to like 36, which that's a lot of points. I wouldn't take that, but yeah, it's gonna be a good game for some guys to get some numbers up before the real tough stretch comes. But yeah, if you got nothing else, I think that'll do it here. Unless you got something. Anything?
No, I don't. I mean, I'm just ready to get all these cupcake games out of the way and get to the real stuff. I
Yeah,
can't
the real
believe it's almost
stuff.
already conference play though. Holy crap, is it already flown by?
Yeah, it felt like we were just talking about NAU because it really only was what a month ago, like 32 days ago, whatever it was. But yeah, it flies by.
Should play
And
year
yeah,
round.
why not? I mean, I don't have any problems with that. I'm sure some people would, maybe the people playing, but I think that'll do it here. Episode 50, the big 5-0. We've made it a long way as a pod, even though there's only two of us here today. The others couldn't make it. We appreciate all you listening. I didn't know we'd get to 50 episodes. I didn't know we'd get to 2 episodes doing this, but thanks for all your support and look for another episode after the Arkansas Pine Bluff game before Gonzaga, but mostly focusing on a preview of what has a chance to be a top 5 matchup out in Seattle. Thanks for watching.